The story coming out this afternoon that Boris Johnson might be returning to the Telegraph, this time potentially as its editor-in-chief, is a development that is as intriguing, as laughable as it is controversial. For Johnson, the Telegraph has been more than just an employer. It's been a platform on which he's launched most of his career. But is Johnson truly the last hope for the Telegraph, and can he step into the shoes of legendary figures like Bermard Levin? We must consider Johnson's history with the Telegraph, the accusations of deceit that dogged his journalism career, and whether he could ever match the wit and the intellect of Levin. Boris Johnson's ties to the Telegraph date back to his early career as the paper's Brussels correspondent, a position that provided him with a platform to hone his skills in the art of newspaper polemic. However, it also led to the first significant accusations of journalistic misconduct, and Johnson's Brussels reports were often accused of being less concerned with accuracy and more with sensationalism, feeding a growing Euroscepticism in the UK. His habit of bending facts to fit a narrative eventually led to his sacking from the Times for fabricating a quote. But he found a safe haven in the Telegraph. And despite these controversies, his subsequent role as a columnist made him one of the paper's star attractions. Known for his flamboyant style, provocative opinions, ability to connect with the paper's largely conservative readership, his columns, however, were often marked by a playful disregard for nuance and an indulgence in hyperbole, traits that have endeared him to some, alienated others. His career in newspaper journalism is peppered with instances where he's been accused of deceit or, at the very least, a reckless disregard for the truth. His time in Brussels is perhaps the most notorious, where he was accused of misrepresenting facts to stoke anti-EU sentiment. These reports included exaggerated claims about EU regulations and rules which, while entertaining, were misleading. He wrote a series of articles in which he claimed the EU was planning to standardise coffin sizes and ban prawn cocktail crisps. These stories were either gross exaggerations or simply fabricated, designed to fit a narrative that Johnson knew would resonate with his audience. This raises questions about his journalistic integrity, with critics accusing him of prioritising political impact or personality over factual accuracy. And his time at the Telegraph itself wasn't without challenges. Aside from the controversies surrounding the Brussels stuff, his tenure as a columnist also attracted criticism. His cavalier attitude towards facts put the newspaper in difficult positions, particularly when he was accused of using his column to push his political ambitions. His shift from journalist to politician and back again, and back to journalist and back to politician and back to journalist, has also been problematic, with critics arguing that his writing was often more about self-promotion than serious journalism. Was he interesting? Was he entertaining to read? Of course he was. I mean, he's not Nadhim Boris. But to compare Boris Johnson with Bermard Levin is to juxtapose two very different journalistic styles. Levin, who wrote for the Times and for the Telegraph, was known for his incisive wit, his intellectual rigour, his ability to dissect complex issues with clarity and precision. His writing was characterised by a deep understanding of the topics he covered, coupled with sharp, often acerbic humour. Levin was not just a columnist, he was a public intellectual whose works transcended the papers in which he wrote. Johnson, on the other hand, is a populist polemicist. His writing is certainly marked by humour and flamboyance, but it lacks the depth and the precision that characterised Levin's work. Johnson's columns have been more about entertainment than enlightenment, more about persuasion than analysis, more about deceit than truth. While he's undoubtedly a gifted writer, his tendency to play fast and loose with the truth, with the fact, sets him apart from Levin, whose commitment to truth and clarity was unwavering. I was brought up reading Bermard Levin pieces, and it's Bermard Levin who introduced me to the delights of Wagner when I was very, very young. Is Boris Johnson the only hope for the Telegraph? It's like doing a deal with Satan. I don't understand this allure. If the Telegraph seeks to revive its fortunes by appealing to a broad populist audience with entertaining and provocative commentary, well, then Johnson is a valuable asset. But if its aim is to restore the paper's reputation for serious fact-based journalism, Johnson will be a liability. As for being the new Bermard Levin, I mean, I don't know why I'm fussing about this. It's my idea rather than anything that I picked up elsewhere. Johnson won't fit Bermard Levin's shoes. Levin's legacy is one of intellectual rigour and moral seriousness, qualities that have not been evident in Johnson's journalistic career or political life. He has his strengths. He's winsome. He's entertaining. He can coin a phrase. But that's a different realm, a realm where wit, charm, and a disregard for the finer details of civilization are the order of the day. In the end, the idea that Boris Johnson should helm the Telegraph is fascinating and equally troubling. It's about the complex relationship between journalism and politics and the way in which the media landscape is reshaped by the personalities who have dominated the news. Could Johnson's return save the Telegraph or further complicate its future by admiring it in further unexpected filth? Because Johnson isn't likely to be somebody who's going to avoid further controversy. Johnson is not a safe pair of hands. He's an entertaining pair of hands, but he's not safe. And the 8 years he spent as Mayor of London, I think was significantly more successful than anything else he's done, but there are people who complain about that as well. Maybe that wasn't sufficiently high enough profile for him to make a complete pig's ear of. The Telegraph is another matter. The Telegraph is a venerable institution. And it's gone heavily off the rails. I mean, heavily off the rails. It needs to be brought back on. But there are very few newspapers that I would rely on today. I tend to look at the Telegraph as one of the last newspapers in the day. And these days my heart sinks when I finally get to it. And this is a story that makes me weep.